We're right on the edge of this huge shift in AI. We're moving away from just simple chatbots to these really powerful AI agents that can, actually do things for us. But while we're all racing to build these incredible assistants, there's this one super important question that often gets overlooked. What do they actually cost? So today, we're going to follow the money and uncover some of these hidden expenses that most people just never see.
And the vision, when you hear it from people like Bill Gates, it's just so compelling, right? Imagine an AI that knows you so well, it can plan your entire trip. And I don't just mean suggesting things, I mean actually booking the flights, reserving the hotel room, and making your dinner reservations. That's the real promise of agentic AI, true autonomous action.
So what's the big difference here? It really all comes down to that one word, agentic. This isn't just about an AI responding to a prompt you give it. No, these systems can take a really complex goal, break it down, create a plan, check on their own progress, and even fix their own mistakes if something goes wrong. They're basically true problem solvers, and they're operating on a whole different level than a standard chatbot.
And that question right there, that brings us to the heart of what we're talking about today. This level of reasoning, planning, and self-correction is absolutely amazing, but it does not come for free. In fact, its cost is one of the biggest and honestly one of the most misunderstood challenges when you try to use these systems at any kind of scale. Okay, so to figure this all out, let's start our little investigation with the costs that are pretty obvious. These are the expenses everyone expects to see on the bill. Think of them as the visible, tangible part of the cost, the tip of the iceberg.
First up, you've got the hardware and the plumbing, right? You need servers for the compute power, you need a place to store all the data and logs, and you need a network to connect the whole thing. This is the physical foundation, and it has a very, very real price tag.
Now, here's where it starts to get pretty interesting. The source material for this gives us an example for running just 5 of these agents at the same time. Look at those numbers. That's a good amount of processing power, memory, and data storage. And you got to remember, this is just the baseline cost. This is before the agent has even done its first real task.
Okay, next up are what we call the functional costs. These are the direct expenses for the AI model to do its main job. First, there's the reasoning step, which is where the AI basically figures out how it's going to tackle your request. And then comes the execution, where it actually does the work, like writing that email for you or summarizing a long document.
So, that's it, right? We've got the hardware costs, and we've got the costs for the AI to do its main job. You might think the investigation pretty much ends right here. But if you did, well, you'd be missing about 90% of the real story. Not even close.
Okay, this is where we get to the good stuff. This is where we uncover the real culprits behind the massive expense of these AI agents. We're about to dive way below the surface and explore that huge, hidden part of the cost iceberg.
And this number just brilliantly shows the scale of the problem. For every single dollar you spend on the agent's main job, that functional task, you could be spending $2 to $3 more on all these hidden background processes. Think about that. The support tasks cost way more than the main event itself.
We call these non-functional costs. A good way to think about it is like all the work a pit crew does during a car race. That crew isn't driving the car, but without them, the car would never, ever finish. This is all that constant, invisible chatter that an agent has to do to manage itself, to check its own work, and to stay safe. So where's all this money actually going? Well, the source material breaks it down into 3 main culprits. 3 hidden systems that are just constantly running up the bill. And we're going to look at each one: memory, evaluation, and guardrails.
All right, culprit number 1 is memory management. Look, for an agent to be useful, it can't have amnesia, right? It needs to remember past conversations, what worked before, what your preferences are. But this isn't just passive storage. It's a really active and expensive process. The agent is constantly making AI calls to search its long-term memory, pull new stuff into its short-term memory, and learn from every single interaction. And guess what? Each one of those steps is another AI call added to the bill.
The second culprit is what's called the evaluation layer. See, to make sure you're getting high-quality results and to prevent little errors, you can't just have the AI grade its own homework. It doesn't work that way. So a lot of advanced systems use this technique called LLM as a judge, and it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. You use a second AI model whose entire job is to objectively check the work of the first AI. It's an incredibly effective way to ensure quality, but it also means you are literally doubling your AI calls for a whole lot of tasks. And finally, we have culprit number 3, agentic guardrails. These are the safety systems that stop the agent from being misused or going totally off the rails. And this isn't just some simple filter. It's an active, ongoing monitoring process. Just look at this chart from the source. The system is constantly making AI calls just to check its own behavior. In this example, the number of guardrail calls is almost as high as the core task calls. The cost of being safe is almost as high as the cost of actually doing the work.
So let's pull all this together. Why is it so absolutely critical to understand these hidden costs? Well, because if you only budget for the tip of the iceberg, your project is going to sink as soon as it runs into the true total cost of running it.
The solution that's starting to emerge to handle this is a discipline called FinOps for Agentic AI. It's basically a framework to get everyone, the finance people, the engineers, the business leaders, all speaking the same language about AI costs. The whole goal is to make every single AI call, both functional and non-functional, totally accountable. It's about asking the tough questions like, is this safety check really worth the cost? Or can we make our memory more efficient? All to make sure you're getting real value from your investment.
Okay, let's just quickly recap the crucial takeaways here. First, the cost of an AI agent is an iceberg. The biggest expenses are the ones hidden under the water. Second, these non-functional costs for memory, evaluation, and safety can easily be 2 to 3 times the cost of the agent's main job. And finally, you simply cannot build a sustainable, scalable AI strategy without understanding and managing this total cost. This is really the key to getting from a cool prototype to a real-world system that actually works.
And that leaves us with a final question for anyone out there who's building or deploying these technologies. It's an incredibly exciting future, for sure, but it demands that we have a really clear-eyed view of the real-world costs. So, the question is, are you planning for the whole picture, or are you maybe heading for a very, very expensive surprise?